Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. Welcome back to Deep Rock Galactic, where today we are going to be taking a look at the M1000 Classic, a really good gun in Deep Rock Galactic. We're going to be going over builds for all of this, including vanilla builds, as well as all of the overclock builds. So let's go over the pros and cons of taking the M1000 over some of the other primary weapons. For the general pros of the M1000, this one has really good damage per shot. It does 55 damage per shot, which is enough to one-shot headshot grunts on any difficulty. That is very, very nice. It also has enough damage thanks to its focus shots if you take armor breaking in tier 2 to body tap regular grunts as well. Another really important breakpoint that you can hit there. It does really good at long range. It actually shoots quite fast ever since it got changed a little bit. The only major con I can think of for the M1000 is that it doesn't have the most amount of ammo overall, so you can run through ammo with it kind of fast. That's just kind of how Scout plays. It's similar to Scout and Ingi, usually running through ammo pretty quickly compared to Gunner or Driller. So long as you run through the missions quickly enough, or you get resupplies often enough, or if you're only picking off high value targets, you should be fine on the ammo. But if you are just spamming this with everything that you see, don't be too surprised if you run out of ammo a little bit quickly. Let's go over the builds. Let's go over some vanilla builds first, and I'm going to be using the site Karl.gg. Fantastic website that lets you make all these sort of builds, and you can kind of see what your stats are actually going to look like. So in tier 1 for the M1000, we have increased ammo, or we have increased damage. Generally, I'll go with increased ammo here. The M1000 might be lacking a little bit in ammo. It's not really lacking in damage, and 10 more points of damage doesn't make it so you kill really anything substantially quicker. But the major breakpoint that you're going for is just regular grunts, which the M1000 already hits right away, so that is very nice. And more ammo will be better. Tier 2, we have increased focus speed, recoil reduction, or we have armor breaking. Armor breaking, I would say, is the better option here for the M1000 because the focus shots can now punch through regular grunts and kill them with one shot. That is really important. It makes it so it doesn't really matter where you hit them, whether you hit them in the arm, the body, or the head, you'll kill them regardless then. Or if you're just shooting single shots out of this, 2 body shots to a grunt will kill them right away too. So it's a really good option to have just for picking off the most common enemy that you're going to be facing in Deep Rock. In tier 3, we have increased focus shot damage. This is by 25% more, which focus shot damage is doubled because you're consuming 2 ammo. So the 25% increase can actually be pretty nice here. Or we have the larger mag size. Usually I'll go with larger mag size here. More focus shot damage isn't bad, and if you want to hit bigger enemies like Praetorians a little bit harder, you can do that, and if you find that the 8 rounds in the gun is fine, then by all means take that. This does make it so your magazine goes up to 14, so that way you get 14 regular shots or 7 focus shots. You can also cheat out focus shots, I should mention that, where if it's in the last bullet of the gun, then you can still use a focus shot and it will count as consuming 2 ammo, but it won't actually consume 2 ammo, so that's kind of nice if you ever need to do that. In tier 4, we have blow-through rounds. This punches through up to 3 enemies, or we have the hollow point rounds, increased weak spot damage. Usually I go with the blow-through rounds here. The main reason why is that if you can line up multiple grunts, or if multiple grunts are coming at you, you can use a focus shot and punch through 3 of them, kill them all, no problem. That can be really, really nice, and it makes so if you're already fighting a big target like a Praetorian and there happens to be enemies on the other end of it, you can potentially just shoot through it and do a little bit more damage. The extra weak spot damage is not bad though. If you want to take that, it can be really good, especially in like Dreadnought missions. It's pretty nice. And then in tier 5, we have hit 'em where it hurts. This makes it so your focus shots stun enemies for 3 seconds. We have precision fear. This makes it so when you hit an enemy's weak spot, then you can fear all surrounding enemies to that enemy. This is with a focus shot. And then we have killing machine. This makes it so after you kill something, you can reload a little bit faster. This one is completely your choice. Most people, I would say, are probably going to be going for the stun. And the stun is a really good option. The stun is very nice against big enemies, especially Praetorians, because if they start spitting at you, you can hit them with this and stun them. This is a very solid M1000 build that is generally the go-to M1000 build for most players, and once you try it, you understand why. It's a really strong build that works really well and has 4 and above. If you want more of a sniper build, I would recommend that you change some of these, potentially going with killer focus in tier 3, and then going with the hollow point rounds in tier 4. This will just make it so your focus shots do more damage, and this can be really good on a Dreadnought build. The extra blow-through is nice for the crowd control, but if you have a secondary that can deal with those, you don't really need that. And so long as you're okay with the smaller magazine, then the extra damage from the focus shots can be actually really nice to have. This is the build that I'd recommend taking with the shotgun if you're going to go with the M1000. It's pretty solid. This is just my standard shotgun build. It does really high damage. It's really good at close range. You could swap the fire off in tier 5 for either of the 2 options, especially if you're taking this on a Dreadnought mission. It's not needed then. This is what I recommend for the Zhukovs if you're taking that as a secondary. This one's pretty straightforward, and it makes it so you can just spray this into crowds. Does pretty good damage, does well at close range. Not the best at long range, but the M1000 should take care of that, and this will be a good general purpose weapon for kind of dealing with everything. You can also switch off the tier 5 with this, since you will need to be running IFGs or boomerangs if you want to trigger the electricity, and if you're not using either of those, then the get in get out would be a better option. And then for the crossbow, I'd recommend this, assuming that you want to be going with the pheromone bolts. If you're not going with this and you're going to go with the electricity bolts, I'd swap over to the magnetic shafts in tier 5 and the taser bolts in tier 1. And this one is pretty strong for taking out things. You have good long range with both of your options here. They both do pretty high damage, and the pheromone bolts can draw enemies away. The electricity bolts are better for dealing with big targets like oppressors, praetorians, and dreadnoughts, where you can stick 2 of those into an enemy and then it just goes at a snail's pace, so you can easily flank around it and just keep shooting it with your M1000. Let's go over the overclock builds now. Very first one up is called Minimal Clips. Minimal Clips increases your overall clip size as well as it increases your reload speed. This one's really good. This one's a very good clean overclock, and the increase to the ammunition is really nice. This will make it so your base gun goes from holding 8 rounds up to holding 10 rounds, which is pretty good. That gives you an extra focus shot or an extra 2 regular shots. This one, if you take it with the larger magazine in tier 3, makes it so you go up to 18 rounds in the gun, which is very nice. You have 9 focus shots then, or 18 regular shots, or a mix between the two. Very solid. This one you can run however you'd like a lot of clean overclocks. It's really, really good. It's probably one of the more solid clean overclocks. I run the exact same build that I usually do with the M1000. If you like the M1000 built like this, you're going to love this overclock because it just makes it even better. It's really fun to run this with Killing Machine too because the reload speed is really fast. You can also reload cancel the M1000 whenever you'd like. So whenever you load the ammo into the gun and you see the number actually change at the bottom, pull out your pickaxe, let it go, and then you'll be back up with the M1000. This makes it so the reload speed is substantially faster with the M1000, which is really nice. For a secondary, I decided to take shaped shells with the boomstick, and I'm running it like this, same as my normal boomstick build. You could take extra ammo, though, in tier 3 if you'd like, and that's pretty good. This one's very fun. It can pick off enemies at very long range. It's still quite good at close range, because the boomstick still has that cone shockwave, so don't be afraid to use this at close range, but it just makes it so both your primary and secondary can be used at pretty much every range and be a pretty solid build, just overall at doing everything. Second overclock for the M1000 is called Hoverclock. This one's a very interesting clean overclock because this one makes it so whenever you're in the air and you use a focus shot, this will slow down your momentum quite a bit. So you do hover whenever you're doing this, which makes it so you can potentially stop yourself from falling to death, which is really nice. You can also just use it to do some like trick shots with. And funny enough, if you actually use a focus shot, kill something when you use the hover clock, you can then use a focus shot again and you'll still be slowed down. And I guess this works as many times as you can kill enemies with a focus shot. If you don't kill an enemy with it and you go to try to use it again, it won't work on that same fall. I don't know why that is, but it is something that is really interesting about this. This actually doesn't change your stats whatsoever with the M1000, so it's still the base M1000. So if you like using that, run whatever build you like. I'm going with the regular M1000 build that's going to be showing up quite a bit throughout this video. And it's just very solid for doing whatever you'd like to do, and it's really fun if you pair it with what we're going to pair it with, which is special powder for the boomstick. And what this one does is whenever you jump in the air and fire the boomstick, you get flung in the opposite direction, or whenever you're falling, you fire the boomstick, you get flung in the opposite direction. You do have to be careful with this one because you can potentially kill yourself really easy with this. This build is also dependent on the cave, or really heavily dependent on the cave gen that you get. If you get a big open cave, this build is super fun. It is fantastic. It's still quite strong because even though these overclocks don't really change the boomstick or the M1000, the base boomstick and M1000 are still quite strong and quite capable really on any difficulty. This just gives you extra mobility. So very fun build. If you've never ran this one before and you have these overclocks, I would suggest trying it out. Moving on to the balanced overclocks, our very first one is called Active Stability System, or the ASS, which this one is pretty fun. This one makes it so you have no movement penalty when focusing. Usually when you use a focus shot, you are slowed down. This makes it so that's not a problem, as well as you get increased focus speed. The downside to this is that it increases your reload speed. But since you can reload cancel the M1000, the negative to your reload speed really doesn't matter. So this one is practically clean once you know how to reload cancel. This one can be really good. I've seen it ran a couple different ways, and most builds actually work really well with this. I'm usually going to go with my general purpose build for the M1000 as that's what I'm most used to, and this one just feels a little bit better whenever I'm using that build. I've also seen it potentially done with just everything on the left-hand side. And that's an interesting build. It makes it so your focus shots do a lot of damage, and if you're hitting weak spots, it's really good, as well as your focus shots come up super fast. So this one can be really fun, but I find that the armor breaking is just a little bit more nice for my sort of needs. But if you want to go with extra weak spot damage or extra focus speed on top of the focus speed, this one can actually be super fun to do that with. It also makes it so this one, since it's basically a clean overclock, it pairs really well with anything. One of my favorite overclocks to pair this with is cryo bolts for the crossbow, which makes it so all of your regular bolts now can freeze enemies. That's really strong because if you can freeze enemies, then you can just keep dealing high damage to them. I'm also running pheromone bolts with my crossbow, so it will be really easy to keep enemies away from me. And if I stick a pheromone bolt and then 2 ice bolts into that enemy, it's just going to freeze everything around it. So that's really good if you see a Praetorian or a Oppressor, just do that. And then the rest of the match should be really easy because you can just pick them off at your own leisure. So that's always fun. Next overclock is probably one of my favorite overclocks. This is Hipster for the M1000. This one gives you an increased rate of fire, gives you more maximum ammo, and makes it so you're more accurate with the M1000. The downside to this, though, is that you do lose out on a decent portion of your damage, which the M1000 was already hitting a really nice breakpoint. So this can be a little bit more problematic if you want to take this on like modded runs or even on like the Has 5 Plus with stronger enemies. I find that Hipster's a little bit more awkward than some of the other options, but this one's just so fun to spam fire at everything. You have so many bullets with this, and weirdly enough, this is actually pretty flexible depending on how you'd like to build it. I'm still running my regular build with this, and this one I'm just going to spam fire at absolutely everything. You can also pair it with just about anything. I like pairing it with a high damage secondary, so for me personally, I'm going to be running double barrel with the double barrel boomstick, and I am running extra ammo with this, and I'm just going to be using this at very close range, so if big enemies get close, or if I get really close to big enemies, I can just blast them with the boomstick, move back, and just keep spamming Hipster at them. This is a very fun build. You can be hyper aggressive with this, and it works really well for pretty much every job. I like it a lot. You could also go with jumbo shells if you wanted even more damage. You wanted something for even more single target, like if you're going to take this on a Dreadnought mission, that one could be potentially even better than double barrel. Then we move on to our brand new overclock for the M1000, which is called March for Death. March for Death makes it so that your charge shots do basically no damage now. They do a little bit of damage, but it is very, very low. As well as anytime that you use a focus shot, this does consume more ammo, and you have less ammo overall with your M1000. But when you do hit an enemy with this, it does mark that enemy, and that makes it so any damage that enemy takes is increased by quite a bit. This can also stack on top of other effects, so you can stack this on top of a frozen enemy and hit them really hard. You can stack this with the IFG that Scout has and make it so you're doing even more damage with it. It's a very, very good support type overclock. This one is still usable in single player, but it is not as good in single player as it is in multiplayer, just because the nerfs that this one gives to your weapon does make it so it's a little bit more awkward, at least if you need to be using focus shots. Your normal shots actually aren't changed at all, so the regular M1000 is still capable of one-shot headshotting grunts on any difficulty, and if you take armor breaking in tier 2, you can still 2-tap grunts in the body with this. So the build that I run is pretty much the same build that I have been running on all of these builds. More ammo so that I can just use this more often, and if I need to use those focus shots, I'm just going to be able to use more of them. Armor breaking just so if I need to rely on the M1000, you can use that. If you're not so concerned with that, and you have friends that can deal with pretty much everything, and you're just there to mark heavy enemies, then going with the increased focus speed can be pretty good in tier 2. You don't want to go with any of the focus shot damage in tier 3. You could go with the weak spot damage in tier 4, but I find blow through to be a little bit more useful since I can still spam the regular M1000 shots, and really any of them in tier 5 are good. It's your choice as to which one you want to take. Fear can actually be pretty decent on certain enemies because you can potentially hit them with the focus shot in a weak spot and have them run away from you or run the other enemies away from you. That way you can just more easily focus on their weak spot just with the regular shots. This one, like I said, by itself is fine. It's not really that great in solo, but in multiplayer it is pretty good. Usually I take a secondary that can just kind of do everything then, because that's going to be more my go-to. The M1000 is still capable of doing quite a bit, but for a secondary, I like taking gas recycling on the Zhukovs. This one is just really nice. It gives you more damage. It has armor shred on it, and you get a lot of ammo. So spraying down regular enemies is quite viable with this. It's actually really nice to do that. Our next overclock is called Super Cooling Chamber, which Super Cooling Chamber was a whole lot worse at one point in time. It's a lot better now, and I think it actually does have a niche, where this one massively increases your damage from your focus shots. It also gives you way more damage on weak spots. However, this makes it so you focus slower than you otherwise would, and it also makes it so you cannot move whenever you're using focus shots. You can still jump and fall like you normally would, and if you're standing on Doretta, it doesn't really matter because that's moving and you don't have to, but this also nerfs your ammo quite a bit. So this overclock specializes in dealing heavy damage to big enemies. That's the main way that you're going to want to use this, because If you have to be killing small enemies, this one just feels really bad, and you really don't want to be doing that. You want to be prioritizing big targets. You want to be the big game hunter of your group. And this one I do build a bit differently than the regular M1000s, since building it for general purpose just is not very good. You don't want to be using this for regular grunts. In tier 1, I'm still going to be taking ammo, because otherwise your ammo can really suffer. You can go for full damage with this and go with the Giga Chad build. It's not going to last very long, but it does hit really hard, so there is something to say about that. In tier 2, I still usually go with armor breaking here, just in case I do need to be using this just for hitting regular enemies, and it can be kind of useful for Praetorians. You could go with faster focus speed here, though. I do understand why people would like to take that one. It's just, for me, if I do end up having to use this as a regular rifle, the armor breaking feels really nice if I'm not hitting those headshots consistently. Tier 3, I go with extra damage just so I can hit things even harder, because why not? Tier 4, weak spot damage so we can hit big single targets even harder. And I'll usually go with the precision tear in tier 5, just so that I can scare enemies away when I do hit those big enemies, so that they're not focusing me so much, and hopefully my teammates can kill them. For secondary, I'm taking the firebolts for this. I'd recommend anything that has a decent amount of ammo and has decent crowd control. Firebolts kind of fit that bill, because you can stick firebolts into big enemies, throw a pheromone bolt at them, and then all the smaller enemies will run over there and light themselves on fire, and you'll at least be able to clear them up that way. This combination can be really strong. You could also take ice bolts if you don't like the fire bolts, and that would be even stronger if you do manage to freeze something and then hit it with your supercooling chamber, because that's going to do a lot of damage to it. And then we have electrocuting focus shots. This one is interesting because this one technically nerfs your focus shot damage, but it does make it so your focus shots can now electrocute enemies. And this will deal damage over time as well as slow them. This one can be pretty interesting, and it's a pretty decent overclock, at least for the crowd control. I do build this one differently too, so in tier 1 I'm going with extra ammo. Tier 2 is going to be the major difference, where I go with increased focus shot speed rather than armor breaking. Since I'm already electrocuting enemies, that's still enough to kill regular grunts, so I don't need the armor breaking then, and it just makes it so I can go for those focus shots a little bit quicker than I otherwise would. Mag size in tier 3, blow through in tier 4, that can be really nice if you hit multiple enemies and shock them, since if they're regular grunts, you're going to kill them with just one shot. And then in tier 5, the stun is pretty nice, since it'll stun them in place, but you can take whatever you'd like in tier 5. This one's actually pretty decent too, but it's an overclock that I probably use the least on the M1000. I think I use all the other overclocks a little bit more than this one. For secondary, I decided to take Bodkin points. Bodkin points is super fun. It's not the strongest overclock for the crossbow, but it does allow me to clear up grunts really easy, at least if I build it like this. So I'm just going everything on the left-hand side. The pheromones are nice for just keeping bugs away from me, and that way I can just trigger the electricity more. I have enough damage here to one-shot regular grunts, so this can be fun to just throw into really any crowd. It's a very fun overclock to use. It's not as strong as something like cryo or ice bolts. Those would be better options if you want to take something like that. And if you wanted more damage, you could also take Trifork Volley, assuming you're taking the crossbow. Anything works really well with the Zhukovs, though, since they get extra damage when things are electrocuted. And really anything with the boomstick is pretty solid, just because the boomstick is pretty solid. And that'll do it for all the overclocks for the M1000. Tell me your favorite builds for the M1000, what you like to run, and what you like about it. Hope this helped you out. Thank you guys so very much for watching this, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.